You become an asset and someone who other people want to share information with because they know you have their best intentions at heart. And that is a completely different conversation. That's the difference between being a jerk and being a leader. And the line is fine. It comes to how do you project what you know and how do you help others?
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Mathews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
Ian, you handsome Schluter strip son of a bitch.
Ooh, we are going to talk about Schluter strips today. If that is not enough to keep you glued to this podcast, I don't know what is.
There will be no curses from Frankie C. I heard the people from the Sun Belt don't like it. I've been doing my best. I think I'm 3 weeks in a row with no curse words since the podcast came out, but I'm trying my best. I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard.
Pretty good, buddy. I'm proud of you. That's we can do hard things, Frank. We can do hard things. Welcome to Let Me Speak to a Manager podcast, where we ask the question, if I'm a dickhead, will anyone actually tell me?
Do you know that Manny, because Max is such a know-it-all, Manny, my youngest, Ellie says that to him all the time. Like literally, you just said that. She walked by and giggled. Like, my name's Manny Cava and I can do hard things.
We can do hard things. Let's do hard things. So Frank told me a story that I thought was beautiful and also quite humorous, but there are so many lessons that come out of this, and they overlapped with a number of different things that I'm teaching in one of my Rising Leaders classes right now. I talk a lot about personal brand and why your personal brand at the end of your career equates to your net worth. The stronger your brand is, the people around your immediate orbit, it helps you find new positions. It helps you get recruited. It helps you get promoted. It helps you get paid more when decisions are made on upward mobility or who gets better assignments. All of your brand is taken into consideration because people are asking questions of the people who interact with you. I'm also in the middle of training on giving direct and critical feedback. And what's interesting is I work with C-level people who struggle to just look at someone and tell them the truth. Like presidents, senior vice presidents that will kind of allude that they wouldn't mind if I would tell someone something, or they'll share something with me and ask how they should, how should I be delicate on this? How should I? And most of the time my answer is just, why don't you just tell me what you said to me? That sounds pretty good. Just be as direct as you can. And Frank's example that he gave me, I thought tied in both of these. It tied in from the employee's perspective of someone who was blind to how his brand was being perceived. And it also tied into the assertive piece, which I've always felt, Frank, you do a good job of towing the line of you're direct, you're assertive, but you also know when to pull back and to be a big softy and be more encouraging. And in this case, Frank was not soft. So why don't we start with the employee and the situation that you started to tell me, and maybe give everyone a little bit of color of how long they've been with you, what their brand already was in the company before this meeting even started.
I'm going to go backwards and I'll do it quickly because I know we have to go quickly today, but I'm going to go to a different story first. So I met Ian in the mid 2000s. You hadn't turned 30 yet, so it was probably like
2006, probably. Yeah, 5,
6, somewhere in there. Right. So Ian was under 30. He came from GE. He was used to firing people. And as Ian and I became friendly, we met on a college campus doing recruiting. But when the market started to shift, it was time to start to fire. And I think Ian, because of GE, always fire your bottom 10%. It was a very different kind of a mindset. And Ian was like, you can always find 10% of your people to fire. He was raised differently than me. Now, Ian and I come from similar backgrounds with our parents, blue collar dads, educators as moms. Both of our moms are school teachers, right? I remember it was 2006 and we just did huge layoffs, huge. And I had the conversation with my mom about doing it. And she goes, she didn't say it exactly like this, but the spirit was, I'm incapable of doing this because I'm an educator and that's just not how I look at the world. I find good in everybody. And I remember telling my mom, I said, Mom, here's what you don't understand about the role I'm in. I have to have these conversations with people, but because if I don't, they will come for my head. And that was the moment in my life where I kind of learned that you have to, if you're going to move to a position, you have to be capable of being soft, supportive, but also really hard and doing shit you don't want to do. Because if you don't do it, they're going to come after your head. And the way that you were raised at GE, you were kind of conditioned for that. And at NVR, it was a lot of the opposite. Let's be soft, let's grow, until the moment changed. So I remember, as a personal growth standpoint, I think this is critical to talk about how uncomfortable that was at 30, 31 years old, and how I've, in the last 20 years, gotten a lot more comfortable with it because I've had to. And I realize if I want to be a full cycle person, if I don't want them to come after my head, I have to be able to nurture, but I also have to be able to use the stick. And somewhere in there, you may have to let some people go. So I've got.
I think one other thing, Frankie, that's a good point. But one other advantage I had on you, or just head start I had on you, you were brought into an area of NVR that was running really well. It was a machine, and you were brought in as a noob, and you were learning the business and just kind of growing. So people saw you as a kid. Even when you got to be a manager, some people still saw you as the college kid that they hired from Florida because you moved really fast in the organization. So you were brought into something that was like sustained growth. Don't screw it up. Things are working well, right? Success breeds more success. So you were part of a machine that only hired. Even then, the wind was blowing so hard at your back that you didn't fire much because you just always needed more people.
Exactly.
I was brought into the same company at a different level. I was brought in as a manager a little farther along in my career, but also I was brought into the broken side of the business. And my mandate from day one was go wreck shop. Like, from the CEO directly looked me in the eyes and said, I'm not sure you're going to be able to keep more than 20, 30% of the staff. Straight. That is his direct quote. And so if you're thinking you're going to come in here and fix all these people, you're going to fall into the same trap the last 3 guys we fired. So I heard it very directly: wreck shop, come hire better people, upgrade the talent. So even by the time the market turned down, I was hardened by the fact that I've been firing people for 18 months,
right?
Because that's what I was brought in as, with a mandate. So it was time to lay off people. I don't know. I was kind of numb to it.
Right. So I think the important thing is this: understanding, no matter where you're coming at listening to this podcast, and I think this is critical, understand where you are in this process and understand where the market is. And those are 2 very, very different things. And I feel like I've gotten good at this. And I think this is the conversation we're going to have today because I've been doing it for a couple of decades now. And I think Ian's been doing it. If I've been doing it for 20 years, Ian's been doing it for 25 or 28. So, but we both approach it from this perspective. Do you want me to get into the story and kind of talk about Schluter Strip?
Yeah. So talk about your fella, like how long you've been with the company and kind of what the perception was of this.
So this is going to take a couple minutes, but I'm going to go through it. So Ian is actually teaching a leadership training class to my leaders. And this is the 3rd time we've done it. And hopefully it'll be the first time we've actually made it all the way through. But the point of the story is, one of my leaders is a lady.
6, I haven't fired anyone yet.
Yes. One of the ladies, I'm going to leave a bunch of names out of this, but one of the ladies who runs our property management division, she runs it and she's wonderful. And we were in a house doing kind of a field visit, showing off a $1.3 million home to people who don't get to see our homes very often. And the way I always start a meeting is I kind of go around the room. What's going on? What's good news? What are you dealing with? What are you seeing? Like, all of these things. And it's mostly very positive. So the lady who runs the department in property management had gone and was feeling really strong, made a nice speech. And then I have a young 22, 23-year-old kid who just built this $1.3 million home. He was real confident because he was feeling good that we're in the home that he had just built.
Was that the biggest house he'd ever built? Was that
100%? This kid's like literally an Econ 201 2 years ago, and now he just built a 1.3
This was a big moment for him. Everyone's looking at
and
his,
he did an awesome job. So we get, like, if we're going around the clock, we made it to, I don't know, 8:30. So we're almost done. And we get to this manager for maintenance. And the maintenance team, by and large, they're a little bit less educated, a little bit less good with public speaking. There's a little bit more rawness to that crowd because they're out working with their hands. They're not public speakers. So pretty normal. So you kind of understand that. However, we'd gone through all the other maintenance managers and everybody was super positive, real excited to be here, that type of stuff. And this guy, literally in front of 40 people, the people who built the home, goes, well, who's in charge of this house? There's a problem with the Schluter Strip. Someone painted the Schluter Strip. And I told Ian this story. And if you don't know what a Schluter strip is, when you install
I did not know what a Sluter strip was.
So when you install tile, there's usually an edge of caulk at the very top or the edges. And what happened about 10 or 20 years ago is they invented this thing in Europe, and it's a metal edge. It's a nice, clean edge. So it doesn't have, it's better for maintenance. It looks cleaner. There's less human element to it because it comes from a factory. So it's a nice hard edge. And if you do a good tile job, you use it on the edges of the shower and the top. So wherever the tile ends, unless it goes all the way to the ceiling. And someone painted it, and I didn't catch it. Our construction manager, the kid certainly didn't catch it. His boss didn't catch it. But this guy is a tile guy. And he's in maintenance for us now, but he was installing tile for years. And literally what happened is he talked about this. My manager of the property management division's shoulders shrunk to the ground. The young kid who built this beautiful home, who's 23 years old, you could just see his face kind of just melting, and he's looking at the ground. And the manager of the entire construction department got pissed because he knows the Schluter strip, and you don't put someone on blast in front of 40 people. So this all kind of happened in front of a group. And what I did is I said, look, I want to point out the fact that possibly the Schluter strip was painted, but this is a gorgeous home done by a really, really just an awesome thing.
You're doing damage control now on something that could have been a cool moment.
In front of 40 people because I had to. And then I quickly moved off that, went to the next person. But you could tell there were some eyes that were either glossy because they were almost tearing up, or were furious because they realized someone had just gotten put on blast.
Yeah. So just a quick thing in general here. The old Abe Lincoln, criticize in private, praise in public.
Right.
There's absolutely the question I always have for people when they ask me, should I give feedback to someone? Should I say something? Should I do something? My question is always, what's the gain? What's the gain? Will they learn from it? Will they accept it? Are they coachable in the first place? Will they appreciate your feedback? And then where do you plan to do it, and how, and what context? And in that situation, that guy is very experienced that ripped him, the warranty guy. All he needed to do was pull him aside and be like, hey, just a quick thing. And that kid would have appreciated that so much, and also would have loved him because he would have known you could have blasted me in front of everyone. You chose not to. You chose grace, and you came and coached me in private, put your arm around me and said, hey, I didn't want to say anything in front of Frank and your boss, but here's something to think about on the next one you do. We never paint the Schluter strip, right? If you would have done that, he'd have had a fan. That kid would have done anything for that warranty guy if he would have handled it that way.
So what I think is important is this. We went to 3 houses that day, and this is the first house. So at the end of that meeting, we were going to go to 2 more homes. I don't need to be first. So I pulled aside the leader of the property management division, and I pulled her aside and said, look, I saw your face. I see what happened. We're going to end at another house. I'm going to pull this guy aside at the very end, and we're going to have a conversation about what just happened. And she was pissed. She goes, I really want you to. So we went to the next house, no incident. We went to the 3rd house, and I asked the entire property management team to stay behind. And we had talked on this podcast about, I did a meeting with the maintenance team at the end of January because we were falling behind on our tickets. So I talked to that whole group about where we were and what was going on and kind of where we had ended with January and started February. And we went around the entire group, and then I kind of let everybody go with the exception of the one who runs the entire property management division, the senior maintenance guy, and then the Schluter strip guy and one other guy. But I wanted to have this conversation. So there was 2 people in the division who needed to be talked to. One, ultimately, I've let go because he wasn't coming to work. He was unreliable. He wasn't great. And then there was Schluter strip guy. And I said the exact same thing Ian had just said. I said, look, we think really highly of you. You seem to be an emotional guy. You seem to be somebody who really cares. You seem to like to open up and tell us stories about your family and your brother and different things along those lines. And he had a brother who tragically died. And I said, I need to be completely honest with you. Nobody gives a shit about your brother. And his eyes were the size of saucers. And I said, the reason nobody gives a shit is because you don't allow anyone to want to care because of how you project things. And he looked at me shocked. And I said, let me give you an example. You were just in a home that sold for $1.3 million. The kid who built it has been with us for under 2 years. And if you know who he is, he's everybody's favorite guy. Everyone loves this guy. And you shit all over him. He goes, I didn't know who it was. I go, I understand that. But the reason nobody cares about your brother is because you shit on other people instead of building them up. And look, I ask permission? May I give you some advice on how I would have liked to have seen you handle that and maybe how you'll handle it next time? And he looked at me like sincerely, because I literally took a big swing and shocked him. And I had then earned the right to do what was next. I said, you are clearly an expert on tile. I know how to build a house. You know more about tile than I'll ever know. So what you just did is you showed everybody, hide your tile work instead of come to me with your tile questions. And you are so much more valuable to this company as the tile expert than the asshole people want to protect themselves from. And now you're in the latter category, which you don't want to be. If you want to be more valuable, make yourself the expert that people want to talk to. If you had walked up to this young guy and pulled him aside and said, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I installed tile for 10 years. Can I show you something? You become an asset and someone who other people want to share information with because they know you have their best intentions at heart. And that is a completely different conversation. That's the difference between being a jerk and being a leader. And the line is fine. It comes to how do you project what you know and how do you help others? Do you build them up or do you tear them down? And you tore him down. He looked at me and he goes, I didn't think of it that way. I didn't mean anything by it. I'm just someone who speaks my mind. I go, I get that. But I also interviewed you and you have 15 stops on your resume. If you don't want this to be one of those stops, you have to fix that. And you can fix it very easily by simply having that conversation in private and building someone up. So the conversation went well. His two managers were there. We had a conversation. It was like, see how this goes. So here's what's super cool. 2 weeks go by. He pulls me aside. He goes, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, oh, crap. What's going on? He goes, I want you to know I really listened to you. My mom was in town. I told her about it. I told her how important my brother is to you. And I want people to understand what I'm going through. And I really want to understand how I can help others be better. And I super appreciate this. And I gave the guy a hug. I'm like, that's the best. Like when you go and do what I did, you take a chance and you kind of punch somebody in the face figuratively and you don't know how they're going to react. You hope they react like this. And I'm so excited that you reacted this way. You listened. And I really, really hope this is a catalyst to a great career with us. And that's how the moment ended.
So you gave some tough feedback, but I think your approach is really interesting too. When you see someone act like a jerk and you see them hurt someone else's feelings, and Frank's a big guy. Frank's an athlete. When we saw that shit in high school, someone getting bullied, what's your first reaction? Is to go grab the bully and slam him into a locker and say, do you like this?
Right.
Like, cut it out. That's your gut feel when you see someone without power, which was your young guy, getting power slammed by someone with power. He had power over him. He had knowledge power. He could embarrass him and he chose to. Your gut reaction is to go respond in force. And kudos to you for not grabbing him and saying, can I talk to you? Pulling him into a freaking broom closet and just laying into his ass. That's what I see executives do a lot of times, Frankie. It's like two wrongs don't make a right. He just did it to someone else, so you go do it to him to show him what it feels like. He wouldn't have listened. He would have just tuned you out. He would have shut off. You didn't do that. You said, can I give you some advice? Can I tell you what I saw? And you started there. Now, it got progressively more direct in tone as you went, but you didn't respond in force. You responded through coaching. And you did a whole bunch of things that literally read out of my slides when I teach some of this. But the most important thing is you started with a tone. Like I've seen you mad. I've seen you bark. I've seen you raise your voice. You started with a slow tone, AM radio voice. Can I talk to you? Right? I'm sure your eyes were burning a hole in him, right? You were probably looking like Tom Hanks trying to not yell at the girl for making an error in a league of their own, right? Like, gonna need you to hit the cutoff, man, next time. I'm sure your eyes were saying something different, but I'm picturing you doing this. You started with a soft tone. You started with some grace, even though he didn't really earn any. And because of that, I think he listened to you. I think he opened up a little bit, knowing, okay, here it comes. I wonder what he's going to say. Your message was tough. Your delivery was really good, as I hear that.
So I have a couple of rules that I live by, and they don't always work, but I have what's called the 2 weekend rule. So if I deliver something if something happens and it's emotional, I try and let 2 weekends go by. So let's say it happens on a Thursday, you let that weekend go by, people go get life, things happen. You come back for the whole next week. Am I going to address it? What are we going to do? You go through 2 full weekends. What I have noticed with most people is all of the emotion is gone, and we can now talk about the subject matter. So that's my 2-weekend rule. But sometimes you don't have 2 weekends to wait. So I try and use what's called the 2 sleeps rule. At least 2 nights go by, and then I can address it.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have 2 weekends. I didn't have 2 sleeps. I had 2 houses, but I knew I couldn't address it then. And you also had something working for you in this instance. We changed physical location twice. So there wasn't the reset that I would have loved, but it was 2 distinct resets because we'd gone to 2 different houses. So the issue happened at a house. We went to a second. We were at a third. There was enough of time had gone by for me to take the emotion out from myself and from the other people and ask him for a reset. So I think it's critical in these moments to realize if you have to reset the deck. Because if you're coming from an emotional place, I was not going to come with the AM radio voice. I was going to come with a flamethrower to the face. So I gave myself, and I've learned this over time, I've learned it about myself, I needed a little bit of a reset. So physiology changed. And because of that, I could come at it from a different spot. So that's a big part of it. But I'll stop there if you have something else.
Well, Frank gave you his rules 1 and 2, which I'm well versed in. He didn't tell you his rules 3 and 4. Rule number 3 for Frank is never trust a big butt and a smile. And I like that one. And rule 4 is beer before liquor gets you drunk quicker. That's rule number 4. So if you're listening at home and you were taking notes, I'm sure you were taking notes on his 2 sleeps rule. Do you also have a 2 shits rule? Don't you have one of those too that we haven't talked about? Maybe that's for a different episode. Frankie's 2 shits rule. One of those, but those are good rules. And for everyone listening, this does matter. Your tone matters when you're pissed. You got to get yourself into a place where I can calm down, not respond in kind. You might feel better for a second if you go get into someone. They're not going to hear anything you say, and they're not going to change. You have to get yourself into a place where you can act. And the way I'll describe this, Frankie's got 2 young kids. When your kids are losing their shit when they're like 5 years old, and they just in spaz mode, right? The witching hour, they just lost it and they're breathing hard. And the last thing you do as an adult is match their energy. You don't start breathing hard and get red in the face and, they're not going to get better. What do parents do? You get down on a knee, you get down to their level, you talk slow, you talk quieter. You are showing them, because that's what kids do. Kids mimic the energy of an adult. You change the energy, you change the tone, you change the juice a little bit. The last thing you do with a kid is match their energy when they're in a bad mood. And obviously this guy's going through some shit and he was in a bad mood. He's going through some personal things with his brother, and not even knowing what he's doing, he's taking it out on some kid in the office, and he doesn't even know he's doing that. And then people all respond negatively around him, and he starts to get madder, and he starts to get more upset, and everyone around him is matching his energy, and he doesn't even see it. And so he just thinks this place sucks. I don't like working with some of these people. So the tone of which you approach that is really good. And I think also he was blind to how people perceived him. I think we all want to be known for certain adjectives. I do an exercise in a class where I have everyone write down ambitiously, what do you want to be known as? What do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? What kind of adjectives do you want people to use to describe you? And, you hear from people, honest, supportive, good teammate, consistent. And all of those things I think are relatively easy to do when everything's going well, when everything's great. Normally, you don't see people's worst side until you put them under stress, pressure, right? I think that's normally when you start to see this guy was feeling some pressure, obviously, some personal pressure, some other things. And so you saw some sabotaging behaviors. And that's where every behavior is either accretive or dilutive to your personal brand. Every behavior, right? You're either building your brand up or you're crushing it. You're going positive, negative with every interaction that you have with people. And even a neutral behavior, this is important. So primacy bias. Primacy bias is first impressions. If I have a bias of Frank, that Frank is insensitive, let's just say I have that bias of you. And then I'm in a meeting and I see you kind of sternly talk to someone. I'm going to think, wow, look at, there he is. That was kind of rude the way he talked to that person, even though it was just kind of a neutral behavior. You just kind of gave some feedback and they went. Now, if I have an impression of Frank or bias that he's a good leader, he's a driver, he's a good operator, and then Frank has that exact same conversation, exact same neutral behavior, give some direct feedback to someone, I will look at that and say, look at him, man. That guy's in control. He knows exactly what he wants to. He's a great delegator. Look at the way he gave direction to that person. They understood and they immediately got up and went. Exact same behavior. My bias gets me to see it from two different lenses. It's no different. This concept of primacy bias, it's all around us. It's how the president of the United States can give a speech and CNN presents it in one way and Fox presents it in another way. Same exact speech. It's just a speech. One side likes it, one doesn't. It's because there was already a bias in place. You were writing something down. Do you want to chat on that a little bit, just on how a neutral behavior can be perceived in two different ways?
I do. So the words that people will describe themselves by, I think, is really important. And the ones that I esteem to are handsome and skinny. And I'm working hard, Ringo, working real hard. What you said about kind of how you
can't fix, at least the skinny thing you're doing a great job of. That's getting closer every day. That handsome, you were born with that. You don't, that's just good genetics.
Look at that smile.
Yeah, look at the smile.
So with where people show up, I think that's part of it. And I think you're more equipped to talk about that than I am. But what I will tell you is this comes down to understanding your environment and developing more than one pitch. And we were talking about baseball before we hit record. I've said this a lot, is like when I used to run a mastermind group, it's like you need to develop another pitch. If you're just a fastball pitcher, that's only going to get you so far unless you have otherworldly fastball talent. Most pitchers have 2, 3, 5 pitches because as they get older, they can't just rely on 99. They have to rely on something else. And what I told this guy is, look, he was like, I'm a cook, I'm a chef. I used to work in a restaurant. I go, still work in a restaurant? And he goes, no. I said, feedback in restaurants is usually pretty toxic, especially from the kitchen staff to the front of the house. Am I wrong? I was like, we don't run this like front of the house, back of the house. This is a company, not multiple companies.
Except the Outback. Everyone treats people with respect at the Outback.
No, it's the same crap there. But point is with that, I said, that's not how we run this here. It's not a front of the house and a back of the house. Yeah. We're all one house. And you have to understand that your department might be slow. If you got you can cross work into a different department. That's better for you. But if we have to punch people in the face with everything we say, it's never going to work. So that's not how we build it here. So you have to understand where you are and what you're looking for. And I think this works for other people in different kind of environments for the following. You have to get people to understand their environment and their situation. And similar to what you said, Ian, like if you think I'm a jerk and I say something, there's bias. If you think I'm nice and there's something, there's bias. There's also bias of where you come from and what you are accustomed to from that other environment. We talked about the difference with you at GE versus me at NV. We had different environments. Like you look harsh to me, I probably look soft to you because of where we came from. So you have to understand you have a perception, but so too did the people that you manage. And you must relate what you want them to. You have to get inside of their head and into what is their reality to help them kind of assimilate to what it is that you're trying to achieve.
And with a brand, so that's really good. You know, I seemed harsh to you, you seemed soft. We're always giving subtle signals out, and those signals are in the way we talk, the decisions we make, our tone, our facial expressions, all of them. Whenever I'm going, so I'm right now I have 6 classes going, and whenever I'm in class mode, I have like 50 new people I get to know. And unless they've been in a class before with me, but even with your group, I'm getting to know some people I never met before.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like speed dating for me. When I'm getting ready for 50, I'll meet 50 people one-on-one over a 3-week period, and I have to get to know them well. And I try not to ask a lot of questions about people. You noticed I didn't really dig in with your folks until after I met them because I can get skewed, and I don't want to be skewed. I want to make my own mind up, but it happens. And sometimes I'll have a manager say, wow, you are going to love Sarah. She's just such a serious worker and she's so devoted. And sometimes I'll have someone say, hey, we're concerned about Sarah and we're really hoping this class brings her out of her shell and gets her a little more focused. Which is kind of, I've had people just straight tell me this class I think is the last chance. And I don't like it when people put in a class for that. It's kind of like, why don't you just replace them and give me someone else. And I don't do that. I'm not a last stop fix someone, but I've had both. And so now take those two sides. I got that feedback, same person. And now in the first two classes, they don't talk. They're just quiet. They're just kind of watching. They're paying attention. They're not like being rude, but they're just quiet. Well, the one that got glazed by their manager before they got in that said they were really good and all this good stuff, I think, wow, they're stoic, they're locked in, or they're respectful. They want to let some of the more senior people talk here, or they're very focused. The one that I got a little negative bias on, it's impossible not for me to think, wow, they're uninterested, they're disengaged, they're checked out. I wonder if they're leaving, they're soft, because I've been skewed a little. Same behavior, just being quiet on my, nothing else, paying attention to me, taking notes, but quiet, doesn't talk. I can take it, every adjective, I can go 1 degree away, good or bad, right? So quiet can be stoic or scared. It can be locked in, disengaged. Those are just one derivative away, 1 degree away from me making my mind up different. And as an employee, as someone who's building a brand that wants to make money in an organization, you have to be cognizant of the signals that you're giving across, especially around people who don't know you. And you have to be cognizant of, here's what people might think about me. Okay, I have to change minds and I have to behave in a way that's contrary to what the bias might be of me.
Yeah, 100%. It's, you and I have had this conversation over the years about being self-aware. And the best way to become self-aware is you're pretty obtuse and you don't understand things, and you're open to the fact that, oh, I need to adapt in how I look at the world and what I see in the world and how I interact with it. And that comes with learning and time. And the reality that you have versus the reality that other have, people have, one isn't right and the other one isn't wrong. It's each your reality. So you have to get to a point where you can get on common ground, especially as a manager, and get to a place where you can relate with somebody and then move them along to where it is that you hope they can.
Something you did though was really good with him. So let's take, this guy is obviously a very direct person, right? And he said to you, like, well, I come from the restaurant industry. That's just how we behave, right? He sees it as no nonsense, right? I'm a no nonsense guy. I'm efficient, right? In a kitchen, you got to be efficient. You got like, what, 5 minutes tops, or people will start complaining they don't have their food. If it's a drink, it better be like 2 minutes. Like, you don't have time for a lot of back and forth. It is a lot of like blunt talking, direct. Even if you're being in a respectful kitchen, it's a lot of talking loud, talking quick, moving fast. Come on, I need it. People don't, I'm working the fish fry at my church on Fridays right now, and we're in a tight little kitchen and everyone's just barking at each other and no one really takes it personal. But if you, in a different context, I'm sure he talked like that in a restaurant. No one thought twice about it. So he sees it as, I'm assertive, I'm productive, I get things done. And you helped him see, like, let me show you the prism in this context. At Cava companies where we're a respectful team and someone comes in like a bull in a china shop, you're rude, you're arrogant, you're a steamroller, you just leave collateral damage behind, you're dismissive, you're a jerk. And so he has one view of his brand, one set of adjectives for the same behavior, really, right? He's saying, well, I'm a no nonsense, I don't bullshit, I call it like I see it. Well, call it like I see it guy is normally not liked in a company. There are times to call it like you see it. There are times where you say, you know what, I'm gonna be quiet on this, or I'm not gonna call it like I see it in front of a group of 40 freaking people in a house that this kid just spent 6 months building, that he's nervous about everyone's feedback.
So what is a strength and what is a weakness depends very much on the situation with which you're using that strength or weakness. Something that can be an incredible strength in one place can be an incredible weakness other places. I'll give you a great example. I can lift a refrigerator and eat a ton of cheese. Can't type to save my ass. Same hands and fingers. Like, in one area of life, it works really, really well. Alex Hamold can climb with no rope. I would imagine he's terrible putting on shoes because his hands are the size of feet. What gives you a huge advantage in one area of life can be a disadvantage if you don't know how to pivot it. So this also comes down to staff.
Really, one second there, because that's really good. The guy that Frank just brought up, if you haven't seen Free Solo, this is the guy that just climbed the tower in China with no ropes. This is a guy who does, free solo stuff, which is wild. You just climb things with no ropes. He spent 25 years of his life pretty much living in a van and just climbing rocks 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day. He's done 30-hour climbs. Really interesting. I saw an interview with him, and when I don't know how you are, Frank, when I watched Free Solo, I was sweating. My hands were sweating. My armpits were sweating. Well, I had a visceral, like, I could not imagine doing it because I'd never. But the thing that I want to share here, in his interview, they were asking him, is there something wrong with your brain? You don't feel fear? And he's like, that's crazy. He's like, as soon as we finished Free Solo, I had to go on a speaking tour. I had to get up in front of groups, companies, all of these things. He goes, I was terrified. He's like, I'd been living in a van by myself out in the middle of nowhere, just climbing rocks. But he's like, do you know how much solitude there is in rock climbing? You're not talking to people. You're focused on the next ledge you're grabbing. He goes, and now I got to get up in front of 300 people. And it really helped me understand, because when he said that, I can get up in front of 300 people right now on any topic you want me to do, and I'll just get up and do it. What's different? Context. I've done that hundreds and hundreds of times. If you asked me to even climb 10 feet in the air, I'd be scared shitless. But he hasn't practiced.
He's got the reps. He's got the reps of climbing.
Yeah. So in one context, you could have all these strengths that really help you, but you have weaknesses that if you put someone in a different context, they could look a lot weaker. Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to bring him up, and I'm glad you gave a little bit of color on that, is because exactly what you just said. Like, he's really, really strong at the climbing aspect. He did not articulate what you just said nearly as well as you did, even though it's his life. Why? Because he's a technical climber. He's not a professional speaker. He doesn't get paid to teach people lessons of leadership. He's never been asked to give a keynote that people were coming in to look at anything other than the pictures. It's very different. It's almost like if you go and watch an athlete get interviewed. The athlete is 6'4" and chiseled out of rock. And they're talking to some doughy ass 140 pounder who went to Northwestern. But the Northwestern guy dunks on him with vocabulary. But on the court, they would get stepped on. But it's different arenas. You go from being incredibly strong in one arena to weak in another. But this comes up to the point I was about to make. If you're listening to this and you're a manager, and Ian and I were talking about this yesterday with staff and building teams, and especially with my group, you have to pick and choose who it is that you want to build a team with. We do something fun in our house. My kids are like, am I better than Max? Am I better than Manny? They're judging each other. And what I tell them is no. Manny is really, really strong at lining up the cars. And he's really good at this. But Max, you're really strong at this. And then I'll ask them, like, what's mommy the best at? And they're like, speaking Spanish. And what's daddy the best at? And I'm like,
eating cheese.
And running kava companies and building houses. So it's like, and what I tell my kids is, can you look at the four of us and look at all the strengths we have? Isn't that amazing? They're all different, and but if you think of it from that perspective, I'm trying to build a positive sense of thought around my kids' skills and what they're inherently good at. But as you're building a team, you have to look at it from that perspective. So-and-so is weak here. Maybe we should find someone who's really strong there. How do you build the right group of people that you can have all the tools you need in your toolbox of humans to get what you're trying to get achieved? Having too much overlap is bad. Having too much individualism is probably bad, but some blend of those things is how you build a successful team.
I love it. So 2 things here to wrap this up. If you work for a company and you're not sure what your brand is, or you're not sure if your perception of your brand matches the reality of people around you, it can be incredibly difficult to get the kind of feedback that Frank gave. And Frank probably was feeling some of these things for a while, and it took an event to actually get him irritated enough to actually deliver it, because most managers aren't good at this. And you're also trying to always decide, like, when to upset the apple cart, when do I go lean in on friction, what do they have going on? So there's a good chance your manager's not good at doing what Frank did. There are ways of getting information, though, where you don't just walk up and say, what's my brand? A question that I love to send people out to ask is, what's one, you know me pretty well, what's a misperception about me that people have that I might not know about? I love that question, because if you, especially for someone who knows you really well, if you ask that, it's kind of a sneaky way of saying, give me some critical feedback, because it almost gives the other person an out. They're not the one giving you the critical feedback. They're saying, well, I think sometimes. So I had a project manager go through my class. he's just a quiet guy, and he's a really driven guy, and he's an awesome builder. And he's like one of these guys, Frankie, probably like you were as a builder, gets to a job site 6 a.m, doesn't go to the office till 11, walks every house, calls he's always on a phone, calling his trades, doing what a good project manager does, right? Getting after, attack the day in the morning. He's not an office guy. But I had him go ask that question, and another builder said, well, I think a lot of the guys think you're not much of a team guy. And it crushed him to hear it. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're always on the phone. You kind of walk real fast. That kind of gives signals that people don't want to stop you and just chit chat with you. And he saw himself as just really dedicated and focused and here to do a job, but he sees himself as a good teammate. And hearing that really changed him. Like, all right, I got to look my other builders in the eyes, ask if I can help. He goes, no one even ever asks you help because they think that it'll be bothering you or you might bite them because you're so intense. You walk so fast and he was like, God, I don't know. That's just what I always did. Right. So I like that question. If you're listening to this and you're still with us, go ask your boss or a peer or someone else, what is a misperception about me that some people have that I should correct?
So I'm gonna do my rap in a slightly different way, and I'm gonna go to the scholar Rodney Dangerfield from the 1980s classic Back to School. And in Back to School, he's got the guy that drives his limousine, and it's actually Adrian's brother from Rocky. Like it's that guy plays the role, and he's talking about his kids, and he goes, "Look, your dad's tough." But he goes, I'm tough. He goes, I had 2 kids. I put one through college. I put the other one through a wall. I think one of the main reasons that I was able to have the conversation and the meaningful conversation is I knew who I wanted to win in this conversation. And it was the one I ended up talking to longer, the Schluter Strip guy. The way that I did it is I whittled from 40 down to 5 and eventually down to 4 of us, me, his 2 managers, and just him. And I said, that other guy that just walked out, I don't think he's going to make it. If he makes it, it's on him. But he's gotten to a point where he's either going to make it or not. And I don't honestly care because he doesn't deserve me to care. I want you to make it. We all want you to make it. And in order for you to make it, these things need to change. They need to get better and you need to understand it. And Ian kind of used the philosophical way of going about it. I use kind of the blue collar way of going about it, but I think we got to a same spot. I earned the right for him to.
Yeah. So there is just finishing this. If you're a manager and you struggle with this, there is a technical component and equation to what Frank did. There are 3 components of this. When X happens, so in this guy's, when you put that kid on blast in front of the group, then you go into the impact. So when X, then impact. When you put him on blast, everyone in the room stared a hole in you and was pissed because he's a popular guy and it hurt your perception. And now no one's going to want to talk to you. Now everyone's going to try to hide their tile and their strips and other things from you because they're going to be afraid you're going to bite them. And you are perceived as a dog that bites. I don't want to build a company where I have dogs that bite and people are afraid to walk around. I need you to be X, right? Z, whatever. So when X happens, the impact is Y. I need you to change Z. There's 3 components. That's all Frank did. That's the technical component of it. And if it helps you to write that down, do I have all 3 of these covered when I have this discussion? People can't argue with how you feel. I saw you do this. It made me and everyone else feel this way. Now it's up to you. You can choose. Do you want everyone to feel that way or do you want to change? You also need to understand if you are cool with everyone feeling that way, I'm not. So I need you to think hard about what I just said to you. So, loved everything you did. We got to roll. If you are new to our show, hit that subscribe button, mash that like button. And if you give us a comment on Apple iStore, we will absolutely hit you up with a cotton t-shirt. Frankie, great job. Way to go with Schluter Strip guy. See you, Frankie.